The title of today's homily is Reclaim Your Space. And I want to make it clear that I'm not talking about reclaiming your car space. I know some of us have a very special space they like to claim as their own here. And I'm also not talking about reclaiming your pew space. You know who you are. I'm talking today about reclaiming a much more important space. But before we go there, let's start with Jesus. Jesus is always a good place to start, yeah? Because it all started with Jesus anyway. In the book of Revelation, right at the end of the Bible, it talks about Jesus as the Alpha and the Omega. He didn't just live at one point in history, but Jesus is our history. He's existed from all eternity. St. Paul says that all things were created in him and through him, that he is the mind that holds all things, including all of us, in being. Jesus the Christ. And during his time on earth, this same Jesus had one very obvious obsession. He called it the kingdom of God. I'm not sure if you realise, but this kingdom of God, or the kingdom of heaven, was the emphasis of so much of his teaching. He made it abundantly clear that the kingdom of God is our ultimate beatitude. It is our greatest blessing and happiness. It is the deep desire of our heart. It is the life that we are all created for. It is the goal of our life as Christians, or at least it's supposed to be. But what exactly is this mysterious kingdom of God? Where do we find it? How do we get it? Often we talk about it, or perhaps we think about it as a place, don't we? As this destination that we get to one day, if I'm good enough, if I'm lucky enough, if God's merciful enough on me. We think of the kingdom as a future reality, yeah? But do you know that Jesus actually didn't separate the kingdom of God from our lives here and now? Jesus talks about the kingdom not so much as a place that we get to, but as a spiritual reality that grows within us, starting here and now. Most simply, the kingdom of God is the presence of God. It's a presence of love, peace, mercy, justice. The more that we are possessed with God's presence, the more the kingdom grows within us. It's this growth of the kingdom that Jesus is emphasizing, he's talking about in our gospel passage today. And he does that by using a metaphor of a seed being planted, as Jesus often does, yeah? I want to suggest there are two key points that Jesus is offering through this metaphor today. He's talking about the growth of this spiritual reality within us, yeah? The growth of the kingdom. First point, the kingdom of God starts small. Thanks, Patrick. It starts small. It's like a mustard seed, Jesus said, which is the smallest of seeds, but it has a potential to grow into something super abundant, beyond our wildest expectations. God can do something beautiful in our lives, but just like a large tree takes many years to grow, so it is with the kingdom of God within us. And so we should remember this. We should trust in this, especially when we face our failures, our disappointments. God's an agricultural God, not a technological God, yeah? You get the distinction? We want technological, we want everything now. But God doesn't work that way. He's agricultural. He's not in a hurry. He sees the bigger picture. The second point Jesus makes is that just like the seed, the kingdom of God is always growing. Always. Whether we feel it is, whether it looks like it's growing or not, It doesn't matter what we think or what we feel. The truth is that it's always growing. Night and day, while the farmer sleeps, when he is awake, the seed is sprouting and growing. How? He does not know. The great news is that we don't do the growing. God does it. Whether we feel worthy of it or not, the kingdom of God grows of its own accord. But we do have an important part to play in the growth. And this brings me to my key point today. If we want this kingdom of God, this spiritual reality to grow within us, to keep growing, we need to make space for it. I want to suggest that this is the primary task of our Christian life, of our spirituality, is to clear the way so that the presence of God can grow within us. And I want to unpack that a little bit today by offering you an image. I'm going to explain the image, and as I do that, I want to invite you to try and imagine it as best you can. If it's helpful, you might just close your eyes for the next 30 seconds as I talk you through this image. I want you to imagine that you're going to visit your old grandma who lives in the country. And grandma lives in this big, beautiful wooden house, yeah? On a big parcel of land. And on that land, there are lots of trees and flowers. There's a river that runs through it. And in the backdrop, these beautiful mountains. It is an absolutely stunning place. So you spend the morning with Grandma, you have lunch, and then after lunch, Grandma gets a bit tired and she nods off on the couch, as grandmas do. And you think, great, this is my opportunity, I'm going to go for an adventure. So you're checking out the house and you find yourself up on the top floor and you notice that there is a ladder that's going to an attic. So, of course, you get curious, you jump on the ladder and you climb up. You open the hatch door and you hop into the attic. And when you're in there, you're surprised because it's actually quite a big space. It's a big room. It's got this beautiful high-pitched roof. It's got lots of windows. It would easily have the best view in the whole house. In fact, it would be the best room in the whole house, except that all the blinds are down. The room hasn't been attended to for a long time. It's dark, it's dusty, there are cobwebs everywhere. There's all this accumulation of furniture and, bits and pieces just get thrown into that room. Can you see it? Can you imagine it? All right, I want to invite you to come back. You can open your eyes. I want to suggest that this attic represents your internal world, your heart, your mind. The cobwebs, as St. Teresa of Avila called them, they're the thoughts, the beliefs, the behaviours that have accumulated in your heart and mind over the years, but which don't really serve you. Do you know those thoughts that you wish you didn't have? Those beliefs that just don't serve you? They're the cobwebs. Often the cobwebs result from our painful experiences in life. When I was growing up, I experienced kind of scarcity in my family a little bit. And for many years, that influenced how I understood God. I thought God was stingy. I thought, if God bless me, that's it for a while now. I have to wait for some more later on, when I deserve it or something. I had this idea that God's blessings would run out or something. Ever had that? But then I realised that cobweb was there in the background, that scarcity thing, and I sat with that and I worked through that. And eventually I realised that God is abundant. There's no limit. There's always more. And that just working through that cobweb shifted so much within me. Yeah? Our cobwebs are not necessarily bad or evil. They're just ways that we have learned to cope with the circumstances of our life. But they can become an obstacle to the growing of the kingdom within us, yeah? Okay, so we've got the cobwebs in the room. in our room, our inner room. But then we've got all that furniture, all that build-up of stuff. You know, that stuff that just builds up. And that represents, I want to suggest, all those things that we cling to for security and hope. All those things that have become idols. And an idol is basically anything that is more important to us than God. Anything that absorbs our mind and our heart and our imagination more than God does. Anything that we rely on to give us what only God can give. That's what an idol is, yeah? Usually they're things like our career, our relationships, our possessions, our focus on our health, our exercise, our appearance, which are not bad things. They only become problematic when they become ultimate things. So we've got the cobwebs, we've got the build-up of all this stuff, all this furniture, all this stuff we're attached to, we're holding on to. What usually happens when we make a decision to follow Jesus, to grow in our faith, is that we try and fit God into the midst of all this stuff in our room, into the midst of the cobwebs and all the furniture. We just sort of plonk God in there, right? Or we try to cover over our mess, over the cobwebs and all that stuff, with our religious beliefs and our practices, yeah? Think, if I just pray enough, I go to enough masses, I'll just lay it over and it'll all be good. Just like we're throwing a big rug over it all, yeah? But when we don't adequately attend to the old stuff in our room, there's not a lot of space for God to grow, yeah? And when we try and cover over our mess with our religion, our understanding of God usually becomes distorted. Our faith gets influenced by our old wounds and our insecurities and our beliefs, which can cause all kinds of problems. And unfortunately, we see so many examples of that in our world and throughout our history, don't we? The ways that people have used religion as a way of validating their prejudice, their injustice against others, against people with different political persuasion or different skin colour or different culture or a different sexual orientation. It's still so rampant in our world today, this lack of compassion by so-called religious people. This kind of black and white spirituality, you know? You're in or you're out, you're wrong, you're right, you're good or you're bad. This inability to sort of hold the tension, the grey, the challenge. I want to suggest that that's there because we're sort of just clinging to these religious beliefs without really working on the deeper stuff. If you want the kingdom of God to grow within you, if you want it to really flourish, if you want to be consumed with the presence of love and peace and mercy and justice, then it is critical that you reclaim your space. Not your car space, not your pew space, but your heart space, yeah? And the only way that you can do that is by attending little by little to the stuff that is accumulated within your room. Right? There's lots of things we can do, lots of practices to reclaim our space. But the first step is always to open the blinds, to let the light come in. The saints reminded us often that we can't get very far at all in the spiritual life without a sufficient amount of light, without enough self-knowledge. So we need to open the blinds of our room, yeah? Let the light come in. We all have layers of awareness, don't we? There are some things in our room that we're very conscious of. There are some things that we're kind of, sort of conscious of, and there are lots of things that we are unconscious of. They're there, and they're an obstacle, and they're causing all kinds of problems, and we don't even know they're there. And they're the biggest problem, yeah? We can only start to truly reclaim our space when we start seeing what is in our room. That's when we know what needs attention, what needs healing, yeah? We roll up our blinds whenever we take time to pay attention to what is really going on within us. We roll up our blinds when we are honest about our fears, about our desires, about our hatred, about our anger, about our disappointments. We roll up our blind when we share vulnerably with someone else. We roll up our blind when we open our heart to God. There are lots of ways that we can open the blind and let the light come in. Journaling can be very helpful for that. Spiritual reading. When we read spiritual books, it's a bit of a mirror for us. It's like it helps us to see what's going on within us. Spiritual direction, counselling, whatever way helps you to attend to what is really going on within you. There are all ways of opening up the blind. I want to leave you with this question today, and you may consider this as some homework. What is one way this week that you can roll up the blind and grow in self-awareness, self-knowledge, so that you can continue to reclaim your heart space for God and for His kingdom?